Steve Hart.
What's up, Louis? Thanks
How
for
we
having me
doing?
on, my man. Thanks
Of
for having
course,
me
of
on. I
course.
appreciate it.
Welcome to the 152 show, brother.
Yes, sir.
So you are the head coach of St. Francis.
No, I am not. I'm not the head coach. I am the technically the assistant coach. Ron
Okay.
Lorenz is the head coach. Although he gives me equal say in the program. He is the head coach.
Mhm.
I am the also the assistant chairman of the Catholic high school organization for wrestling as well.
Okay, okay. So you're the assistant coach of that and of the chairman of the Catholic schools.
Correct.
Okay, cool, cool. So let's start off by tell us about the season that St. Francis had this year because it was an incredible season that you guys had. So let's start off there.
So what I'll start off saying, to build something like we have, no one person builds, a program in a system like we have. A saying I always say is it takes a village, right? It takes multiple people, multiple hands in the pot to help build something like we have, whether it's coaches, families that are dedicated and bought in,
Mhm.
and the administrative support that you have. So there's multiple factors and people responsible for building something as big as we have. And
Mhm.
that was even the case when I was at Star Point and we won the state duels there. No one person
Mhm.
builds something, builds a championship program to that level. um the season we had was obviously outstanding. And we ended the season ranked 48th in the country by Matt Scouts in the Fab 50, right? So
Mhm.
we're a top 50 program in the country. We had a win on this 32nd ranked program in the country. What our goal was to showcase New York wrestling, right?
Facts,
And
facts. Love that.
yeah, and to do that, we had to get outside of New York to showcase New York
I
wrestling.
agree.
That was we attended, the Walsh Ironman, we attended Powerade,
Mhm.
and then um, a thing that we did for the first time this year on the back half of our season is we were invited to quad duels against some of the top programs in the country. The first one was at Detroit Catholic, where we
Okay.
where we saw Detroit Catholic, Dundee, and Bishop McCourt. Um,
Some of the best teams in the country right there.
some of the
Right
best
up
teams in
there
the
with you
country.
guys.
Right. Um, and then the very next weekend, we went out to St. Edwards in Ohio.
Another
Um,
legendary program right there.
right. And we wrestled St. Ed's, Wyoming Sun, and
Hmm.
Marmion Academy from Illinois, who is ranked 21st in the country.
Hmm.
So, our goal was to chase losses, right? Showcase New York wrestling and to make sure our best guys were getting in those deep waters that made sure they were ready for the postseason. Um,
Absolutely.
and I think we accomplished that, right? Like,
Hmm.
we had a couple guys, not reach their overall goal at the state tournament and took a loss that we necessarily didn't see coming, and that just
Hmm.
happens in wrestling, right? It happens.
Hmm.
Um, but this is bigger than St. Francis wrestling. What we were trying to do is showcase New York wrestling as a whole. Long Island historically has been the showcase for New York wrestling, right?
Hmm.
Historically throughout my era back in the 90s,
Hmm.
all throughout, Long Island has been the showcase area for New York wrestling. Then for a very long time, Menacing Valley has been right.
Yep.
With the hammers that they've had come through there and the coaching staff that does a great job. And for us in at St. Francis, we it was bigger than us. We
Hmm. Hmm.
we want the entire state to benefit from this. Um, and we're willing to make the sacrifices and travel the country and do these things to put New York on the map.
And that's where me and you are operating on the same wavelength, right? Because anybody who follows my platform knows that I'm a New York guy through and through. When I was at the NCAA championships, I saw you there. When I was at the bar hanging out, everybody kept walking on me and say, "Oh, you're the New York guy. You're the New York guy." And I'm like, "Hell yeah, I'm the New York guy." Because that's what the same thing, everything that you just said, that's what I want for New York. I want, historically, we weren't even allowed to go to the tournaments that you were going to, right? Not too long ago, we weren't allowed to go to the Ironman. We weren't allowed to go to Powerade. We weren't allowed to travel out of state, right? There was a lot of restrictions in New York wrestling. So now that things have opened up, I'm glad that you guys are taking advantage. You know what I'm saying? And going to these tournaments, because that's what it takes. Honestly speaking, in New York, like for a lot of people, the pinnacle is just the Eastern States, right? Right. It's like it's the Eastern States, the sectional tournament, and the state tournament, or the state duels. Now that's a new thing too. The state duels. That's like the pinnacle. That's the best competition that you're gonna get in New York, right? And even the local tournaments are, like they have a few like. I'm not sure. I know the Windsor tournament is always known as like a pretty tough in-season tournament in New York, and you have the Shoreline tournament over there in Section 1. Back in the days, like in Long Island, it used to be and I think it's still tough. The Massapequa Holiday tournament was always tough. So like we have a couple, but you're not seeing teams that are ranked 21 in the country. You're not seeing teams like St. Ed's. You're not seeing teams like Wyoming Seminary. So you guys didn't have a typical New York season. That's what I would like more teams to do in New York, is have a season like you guys did. Travel.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, it's not the easiest thing to do, right? Like, I have a family at home. I have a young daughter, and my family makes a
Mm,
lot of sacrifices when I'm gone every weekend out of the state, literally
mm,
traveling every single weekend,
mm,
from Thursday, not coming home till Sunday. Um, so, I understand why, other teams may not be able to do it, whether it's the resources, whether it's their school administration doesn't allow it, or whatever the
mm,
factors may be.
mm.
But we, we're making the sacrifices to be able to do these type of things. And it's a testament, honestly, to our kids, right? The kids, they've bought into that belief, they've bought into that system. They're not afraid to go wrestle the top talent in the country and take losses when it happens.
Mhm.
Um, because that they know that you learn more from a loss than you do from a win any day of the week,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And I've always had the philosophy, and I know my counterpart Ron always had the philosophy. Our job is to find our best kids' losses, and if they don't lose, hats off to them. But my
Mhm.
job is to chase losses for my best kids, because then I know we know that they're fully battle tested, and,
Absolutely.
and that's the goal. And what we hope to do, in upcoming years is we want to bring these top, now that we're out there and have built the connections and built the relationships,
Bring them to New York.
we're going to bring them to New York.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Bring them
And
into New York.
and that's actually a big knock that I've had, right? Of the Eastern States tournament, right? And I've been saying this for a long time. I say, why has the Eastern States tournament not grown into the name is literally Eastern States, right? But you're getting a couple of out-of-state teams from New England. I know in years past, like when I was competing there, we had a team from Virginia. Wyoming Seminary used to come. They don't come anymore. I feel like New York needs to do a better job of recruiting. We border two of the best wrestling states in the country, Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I never understood, why are we not getting teams, even if they're just local teams in Jersey, they're battle tested. Even if they're just local teams in Pennsylvania, invite these dudes to come down to New York to the Eastern States tournament. Get state qualifiers in PA and New Jersey, and watch, they're gonna take out some of our all-state guys. You know what I mean? Like, let them come. I never understood why the highlight of and it seems like they're just content with it being D1 versus D2. In my opinion, that's not enough.
It's not, and I agree completely, Louis. And I'll tell you this, even dating back to when you won the state tournament, right? Like, and this may be an unpopular opinion, but I don't think our state overall is as deep as it used to be.
Oh,
I
that's
think
a
I
fact.
think I think the top guys are very, very good. The Cam Howards, the Devin Downses, the Griffin the Plants,
Yep.
the Dunias, those
Gavin Manganos.
yeah, the Gavin Manganos, the Chris Notos, those guys are very, very good, and they're national. Every one of them is nationally ranked, and
Mm-mm.
but it's the depth underneath that, right? The depth
Yes,
underneath it is where I think it's starting to thin out a little bit, and we gotta
absolutely.
we gotta
And I
bring
mean,
that back. We gotta
yes,
bring that back.
That was the last video that I made last week. You know, the last 152 show episode. I literally broke down. We have half of the amount of nationally ranked wrestlers now than we did compared to 2015. Right. And then I also looked at, like you said, I looked at the 5th place guys, the 4th place guys, the 3rd place guys. Right. For example, in 2014, Tommy Dutton took 5th in the state. You know what I, and that's a household name. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
that's just the first example that comes to mind. There's many more, but that's the one that just stuck with me. It's like Tommy Dutton, who placed in Super 32 that year, took 5th in New York State. So that's the type of stuff that we need in New York, right? That's what's going to translate to the next level, right? To to the college. You know what I mean?
Well, in to your point, right? Where, to that next level. We were just at the NCAA tournament, right? And there's good wrestling at every level in college, from JUCO, D3, D2, NAIA.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's good wrestling at every level. Wrestling is a very hard sport, but when you peel back the layers, by New York losing depth that it once had. Here's a question, and I can't answer it because I'm not a college recruiter on a college staff. Is New York becoming unrecruitable? That's the question, right?
Well,
I'm not saying because of the depth, right? Like, is it becoming? Do we have to bring that part of it back? And how do we do that? And the way we do it is we have to bring in the powers outside of New York and push our kids. We need to push them, and there's programs that do that, right? Great Coach Ray Adams at Long Beach. Legend does that. I see him all over the country. Minnesota Valley does that. We see them all over the country. Iona Prep, they do that.
Yes, and look, these are teams that are consistently doing good.
Right,
because they're doing
good. Right, and
because they're doing that.
And the majority of these programs, right? The majority of these programs are tied to some of the area's biggest off-season clubs, right? Like we run the biggest club in the Buffalo area, KD6. Iona has Empire with Coach Sean Deagle. Minnesota Valley for the longest time had Underground. So these programs are tied to clubs.
And Long Island has a plethora of We got so many. We got so many clubs in such a small area.
You have KD. You have Savage.
Savage, Ascend, Volgar, Prime Wrestling Club. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's so many.
We got GPS out in Section 1, 2 over there. So the coaches that are tied to these clubs and their athletes are the ones that you're seeing really their kids develop and produce. But like I said, it's all about exposure, in my opinion, and that's what we did this year. I thought we brought exposure to New York, and unfortunately, Louis, I hate to say it, there was, we have the guys that love and respect us, but we also have a lot of the sideline haters as well.
Oh yeah. I was waiting to get here, baby. Don't worry. Listen. The question is, does majority of New York State not want Catholic school in the state tournament? And I would have to say, with the dynamic of right now, I would say yes. I'm not going to name any names, but I can tell you, I hear chitter chatter. And, I hear them saying, oh, Catholic schools shouldn't be in the state tournament. Oh, they're recruiting. It's not fair. We can't compete with them. Okay, cool. So let's take St. Francis out of the tournament, right? You just took you just brought it from here to here, right? So what do we want to keep doing in New York? We want to keep watering it down? Is that what we're going to keep doing? That's what they want to do. That's not what I want. I have a radical view. I want New York to throw everybody in one. That's how I am. I'm saying make it all one division, let all the Catholic schools come, and let's have a banger of a tournament, right? That's how New Jersey does it, right? And they're consistently the best. You know what I mean? So, and it's funny. I went to, at the NCAAs, we were at one of the bars close by, and I saw one of the commissioners for New York State. I don't know the guy's name, but I think he was an upstate guy. And I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, because his shirt said Commissioner of NY, the New York of New York." And I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, when are we going to make New York one division again?" You know what he said to me? He looked at me and laughed like it was the funniest shit he's ever heard in his life. He's like, "That'll never happen." You could see it in his face, like as if this is like the the general consensus of everybody who makes decisions. Like me even saying that was like so left field for him. You know what I mean? So, it's like, what do we want to keep doing here? Right? Do we want to just keep watering it down? And it's I saw the at the state tournament, right? You look at those first round matches, some of these first round matches, bro, there was not good wrestling there in a lot of these first round matches, you
So
know?
you're absolutely right. Now, I don't ever see it going back to one division. And I'm good with the two divisions. I really am. And I'll say this, right? The people that don't think the Catholics belong at the tournament because of recruiting or whatnot, I would say this: wrestling is a two component sport. You have the team aspect and you have the
Mm,
individual aspect, right?
sure.
I don't. We are not allowed at the New
At
York
the
State
dual meet
Public High
state
School
champion.
Athletic at the duels, and we shouldn't be allowed there. Okay, because it's
Okay.
a team event. It's a team event, and I completely agree and believe we should not be allowed there because we are on a different landscape. And I am completely fine with that. And a lot of the people that I know, completely agree with that.
Mm,
But for the individual event, you have to think about this. These individual kids, if they were in the public sections, you would have to go through them anyway. By them leaving the public section, going to the Catholic section, it gives those other kids that wouldn't make the state tournament an opportunity to now
a
be there
chance. Yep.
because they're qualifying through a different route, right? And another point of this is the individual component, right? Is that people forget this. All of these kids that go to these Catholic schools, their parents still pay their public school tax in the district they live in, which essentially funds the event in some way, shape, or form,
Okay.
right? So they still pay their public school tax and they're paying tuition at the Catholic school. Um, so people can't lose sight of that. The individual component, we don't compete in the team duels at all. So,
Mm.
whether these kids are at a public school or private school, you got to beat them anyway.
But that's my thing too, and I even said that. That's something that I've thought about. I said, what you said that it'll never go back to one division. Fine. It
Yeah.
seems like that's the general consensus, but why can't it be that this dual meet state championship stays two divisions and then the individual one goes back to one, right? And it comes down to this, right? The people who listen, when I was in high school, Catholic school was an easy win for the most
Right.
part, right? Nobody was complaining back then, right?
No.
Nobody was complaining back then, but now that we have a team like St. Francis, now it's a problem. You know what I'm saying? So to me, it comes down to this. I don't think that, from what I'm seeing, and I'll be the one to say it, I don't think that they're really looking out for what's best for New York wrestling. I think that they're looking out for what's best for their school. They want to win, right? That's all they're caring about. They say, oh, it's not fair. We can't compete with them. But you're not thinking of the bigger picture. If we have a St. Francis and then we can develop more teams like St. Francis that are national. I don't think New York, someone could quote me if I'm wrong, but we, in our whole history, we might be hard pressed to have multiple teams in one season be nationally ranked. It's usually one, right? For the most part, it would be a St. Francis or a Menacing Valley. You know what I mean?
Right.
Will be nationally ranked. We won't have multiple teams in New York be nationally ranked. So that's why I say we're not even really looking out for what's best for New York wrestling. It's all about, can my team win? Can I sneak in one of my individual wrestlers to take sixth in the state? That's what it's really all about in their eyes, in my opinion.
Yeah, and what does that do overall for the sport of New York wrestling, right?
It does
It
nothing.
it doesn't help it because if that type of outlook is more individualized based, selfish based, like, which I get. I understand they got to worry about their program
Of
first, right?
course.
But when you worry about your program and the overall big picture, that's when you really see the growth of your program here.
Of
Um,
course.
and so I think, even with being in two divisions, I think there's a way to make New York wrestling deeper at the state tournament but we have to make sure we're getting the best kids there. Let me give you an example, Louis, of three kids this year that won state championships. Okay.
Okay.
These three individuals didn't qualify for the New York State tournament the year before, and they had to
Okay.
sit home. So one was Jake Nieto, who's now at Massapequa, was at a Catholic school. He took
Yes.
second place.
Mm-hmm.
Another one was Tavio, who was with us in took second place last year and won the state title for Southwestern this year over, on the
Okay.
small school side.
Hmm.
He had to sit home. And the other one was Brennan Sprague, who took third place in the Catholic
Arsenio Farrell.
sectional and won the state title this year. And let me give you another example. Brennan Sprague had one loss this year, and it was
Hmm.
to our kid, Braden Kellison, who was a former state semifinalist. He had one loss, and it was to him at the
Hmm.
Catholic duels. And in the sectional, he wrestled a great match and beat Kellison. Kellison had to stay home. He
Hmm.
had to stay home. That's a kid who would have vied for a top 3 place finish in the state tournament, but he's not in the bracket. So
Yep.
New York, I would hope that at some point they look to expand and not have 11 open lines, buys in the first round of the bracket,
Yep.
and look at a better qualifying way to make sure all the best kids, you know, qualify and make it there.
I agree. That I like how they do it in the NCAAs, right? Big Ten, which is obviously by far the best, they get more bids, and then some of the other the weaker ones get less bids, right? So if Catholic school, so you guys are only allowed one, right?
Right.
Catholic school, but if Catholic school is they should do they none of this makes sense to me. Catholic schools should be a part of an official member of the state tournament, in my opinion, right? It
Right.
doesn't make no sense to me why the one that's even more bizarre to me is PSAO. That makes no sense to me because they're actually literally public schools, and they're not considered.
So
Uh,
I could explain to you why that is. So
yeah,
the reason
explain.
why the reason why the Catholics are not and the PSALs are not, even though PSAL are public schools, is that the term you always hear is, oh, they don't have borders. Well, in the New York City PSAL schools, you
You
don't
could
have to
go anywhere
live.
you want. Yeah.
You could go anywhere you want. That's exactly it. So
Mhm.
when they don't have borders to say, that's when they're not official members,
Mhm.
and they're affiliate members. So, it's all about the borders and the districting, which is my understanding. But there is a way to qualify the best kids, and it would be going to a regional system like Pennsylvania. Okay, so I'll give you an example. The number one ranked kid in the country at 120 pounds, Landon Sudin,
Mhm.
did not win his regional. He got knocked off in the region this year in PA, and then won the state title.
And that's
Imagine it.
regular out there, by the way.
Right.
It's
Imagine
regular.
if the number one kid in the country, because he had a bad match or he took a loss, was not able to compete at the state tournament. That would be a travesty.
It would. It
It
would
would be
be.
a travesty. So
Yeah.
there's a way to get the best kids there, and it's through a regional system. And I know that New York likes representation from every section for every weight class, but a simple concept would be get rid of the class tournaments, have your sectional tournaments the week the class tournaments are.
Mhm.
Every weight class champion gets an auto bid to the state tournament. The
Okay.
next weekend, all the second, third, and fourth placers go to a regional qualifier, and you wrestle your way into the tournament.
Okay. I mean, I like that. And another thing I always thought is like look at and this is me not this is me not knocking any area, but look at sections like section 10 and section 7, right?
Mhm.
How many schools do they even have? You know what I mean? They got maybe 3, 4 schools in the whole section.
Right.
Why it never made no it doesn't make any sense to me as to why they are able to be their own section, right? They have like 3 schools, 4 schools now. I know when I was in school, Section 10 did have Division 1 schools. I think now there's no more. I think they're all D2, and Section
Right.
7 has always been just D2 schools. But I don't know. There's got to be a better way to do it because you can't have a section with just 3 or 4 schools being their own section. It doesn't make sense to me.
No, sometimes you're getting a bye to the state tournament, and you have a kid with a losing record at the state tournament. How
Yeah, it
does
makes no sense. It's like throw them in, combine 10 and 7 or something. You know what I mean? Or put 10 with 6. I don't know. There's got to be a better way. You can't just you're right. A lot of times they do get a bye. And then you compare it to like Long Island, where just in Nassau County there's hundreds of schools.
Well, I mean, exactly. I mean, look at not this past state tournament, but the state tournament before. The 101-pound weight class was so deep in Section 11. the top 5 out of 7 ranked kids in the whole state were in that section, and they could only
Hmm.
take 2. So 3 of the
Yeah.
top 7 ranked kids in the state had to sit home.
There's so many, especially in Suffolk County. There's so many examples of this. You know what I
it,
mean? Like,
there's numerous examples of this, and I hope my hope one day is that it gets, some new fresh ideas come in, and but with that said, like, the New York State Wrestling Committee has done a great job for a very long time. But maybe some fresh ideas should be welcomed, and not
I
the
think we need
same.
some young energy. I really do. I think we need some young energy in there, and some new, some they might call it radical or a thing. Oh, it'll never work. But you know, I think we just need some ideas where it's for the it's. You ever heard that thing like it might get worse before it gets better? So
Yes,
it's one of those things where it's like we need to think about the bigger picture here, right? Like we might try something and it may not be perfect at first, but we need to think about long term what's going to be better for New York, what's going to raise the level where we're back to having a nationally ranked wrestler per weight class in every single weight class, where nationally ranked wrestlers can lose at the state tournament. You get a nationally ranked wrestler now in New York, he's pretty much walking through the tournament maybe until the finals, right? For the most part. It wasn't like that before. You know what I mean? They were tested. You know what I mean?
right.
So, and we need it. I would like it to be like PA, where the number one ranked guy in the country loses in the regional tournament, right? In the direction that we're going, it's not like that. It's going to be where it's very, very top heavy. The good guys will always be good in New York because we have very good coaches here. You know what I mean? So
Right.
we have the top guys will always be very good, but we don't want our fourth and fifth and sixth placers to, just be such a huge drop off.
Well, and I'll tell you what, another unpopular opinion, but it's going to happen. Trust me, with the changes coming to New York Military Academy wrestling, you are going to see very good downstate kids leave their public schools and end up at New York Military Academy over upcoming years. I'm
So
telling you,
explain that. What changed?
there'll be some new leadership coming in. It's not for me to announce or anything like
Okay,
that,
okay,
but
okay.
there's going to be some new leadership coming into there. And you'll see, I think you'll see a big change coming. And I think New York Military Academy over the last few years has grown exponentially already. And has gotten some really good talent there. I mean, Cooper Murley went there, right? Cooper Murley, I think, was Dunia Simbomana's only loss this year, right? In
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Eastern States
In the
Finals,
Eastern
right? And
States
that,
final.
yeah, and that kid's a multi-time state champion. He's,
Nationally ranked,
yeah,
Fargo
nationally ranked.
champion.
Right, great, just a great talent. Went over to New York Military Academy, had a great season over there, and is on his way to West Point. But
Mm.
I mean, this is, I believe this is only the starting point here in New York. You're going to see, like, look at New Jersey. The best schools in New Jersey are what? They're private schools,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, I mean, St. Joe's Regional,
All the Catholics, all the St.
are
Virgin
right,
and
and
Camden Catholic and all these
yeah,
schools. Yeah,
and the crazy thing is, Louise, I'm a public school guy. I went to public school. I work in public school still, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
And it's just, people can't be faulted for wanting to put their children in a better opportunity for their futures, I would say, right? And whether that comes from the sport, which mostly it does, right? It's usually more about the sport than anything else. um but these kids, I just, I would say the negativity that comes towards them when they move over to a private school, I wish there would be a different outlook for the most part.
It's not, yeah, it's not their it's not their fault. It's the parents' decision to try and set their children up for the best chance, right? If there's good coaching over at this school at St. Francis and they want to be a part of that movement and that program, that's not recruiting. That's just they want to go there. You know what I mean? That's just what
No,
happens.
Louis, I'll say this: winning recruits itself. I don't make phone calls; we get the phone calls.
Yeah,
Like that,
I believe it.
and that's
It's
a true story. Like, we receive the phone calls. We're not like, oh, let's go to this youth match and let's see who we could pull out of here.
mhm.
That's never happening ever.
I believe you. It's you know, eh,
Yeah, it's
it's crazy stuff, man.
but we need to advance New York wrestling, right? And like I said,
Absolutely.
there's a lot of you know legendary coaches across New York, especially downstate in your area, that have done it for a very, very long time. But
Mm.
we need more. We need more than just that. We need these newer coaches coming in, taking over programs. We need administrative support. We need and not for nothing, we need to be unified as a state. We shouldn't be at
Yes,
war. We shouldn't be at war with each other. We should be unified in building the state together.
I agree. I 100%. That's another big issue that I see. It's always the outside of Catholic school, it's always upstate versus Long Island, right? That's
Right.
always like the big one. The Long Island guys always like, oh, we get all the bad calls. Upstate hates us. You know what I mean? And then probably upstate thinks we're a bunch of snobs and we're Long Island guys and whatever. We're usually winning. So it's we need to be unified because there's power in numbers, right? There's power in numbers, and that's the only way that, because like I said, the bigger picture here for everything is for New York to improve. That's why I sought out to even start doing this, right? People make fun of me. They're always like, yo, Unc, hang up the shoes, stop living in the past, right? They say that to me, right? But I'm like, you guys don't understand that I think about the wrestling that I was a part of and that I saw, and then I go and I watch now, and it's not about me living in my past. I want you guys to experience the same stuff that I did and that same high level, because I'm proud to be a New York wrestler. Where
Right.
I go with Team Excel, which was just a Long Island team, and we go and we beat Apex and Dark Horse from New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and Team Triumph also from New Jersey, and we win the Pop and Flow National Duels. Just a Long Island team, not even a New York cherry pick team. So this is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I want to see. Where you get a guy like Chris Arouse from Wantor, who never even won the Nassau County Championship, and then goes and wins Virginia Beach Nationals. That's what I'm talking about.
Right. Right.
That's what I'm talking. That's what I want to see from New York. It happens in PA, it happens in Jersey, it happens in California, but it's starting to not happen as much here, and that's what upsets me.
I know it, and I agree. I completely agree with that. And that's for me, right? Like, so I network. I talk to a lot of people across New York wrestling. I have a lot of friends throughout New York, upstate, downstate, central New York.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's obviously the other side of it, the people that are you know are the ones complaining about everything. But our overall goal at St. Francis Wrestling, our staff, our kids, is to showcase New York wrestling and unify New York wrestling, because the only
Mm-hmm.
way we're
Mm-hmm.
going to grow is together.
Yep.
If we're not in this together, we're never going to grow and get it to where the levels we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Do you think in the future that it's possible that they really might try and take Catholic schools out of the state tournament?
I can't I can't say one way or the other on that.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope not.
Me
Again,
too.
like I said, I completely agree with not being at the New York State duels. I completely agree with that, because it's a team event and our team is made up in a different landscape. But the individual tournament, it would be a travesty if they remove the Catholic schools, because like you said, it would be watering it down. And
Absolutely.
you want those kids to you know to have to compete against them. You want to see who really the best individual is in New York State in every weight class.
Absolutely.
You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? And like, if those guys are not in so the Catholic schools, the CHSAA as a section took second place behind Suffolk County Section 11 this year
Yeah.
by
Yeah. So
by like 7 points, I think, right?
yeah.
So you look years back, typically the top two scoring sections in recent
11
times
and
have been
8.
11 and 8, I would say, historically, right?
Yeah.
Section 9, with Minnesink Valley's power over the last bunch of years.
Snuck in there.
Yeah, it was 9 and 8, with 11 being in third for a while. But just imagine this. Imagine years back when 11 and 8 were the top two scoring sections at the state tournament. Imagine removing section 11 or 8 from the state tournament.
Yeah. It's crazy.
It would be the same. That would be the same thing if you removed
Yeah.
the Catholics right now, because
Yeah. That's where you guys are, and I love it. I love it. I love to see. It would be boring if it's just 11 and 8 every year, right? It would be boring. And 11 is still dominating, right? Because that's just everybody knows when you see that 11, they get down, they're
Right.
serious. But
Right.
it's like it's kind of like the Penn State, right? It's like it's getting boring to see, and I like Penn State, but it's getting boring to see them win every single year. Can we get somebody else to challenge them? You know what I'm saying? Now you got Oklahoma State coming through with David Taylor. It's nice to see somebody new. It's Catholic schools like Oklahoma State. You got some new energy in there, and they're coming, they knocking on the door, and I
Right.
love that. I want to see. And especially you guys being a Catholic school for way far from me. I've never even been to Buffalo in my life. You know what I mean? So it's cool that, these are guys that we don't typically see the whole year. You know what I mean? And now you get to the state tournament and you're like, oh, like, I don't know. I don't really know who these guys are. You know what I mean? But they're tough. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
from far away, it would be horrible to take away the Catholic schools, especially just off of one team doing well.
No, you're exactly. And we don't want like the whole shouldn't be punished because of one, right? You don't punish the group because of one. Well, and to your point where you mentioned, we're on the other side of the state from you. The only time you see us is at the state tournament. Well, you know, I'm hoping that changes next year, Louis. I'm hoping we could get some, Blair and a couple other big time Jersey teams and do a quad meet down in your area where,
That would be
your
great.
area is exposed to a big time quad duel between,
But I'll tell you right now, I'm a Long Island guy. We don't have one team that could compete with that with those schools. I don't think so.
yeah, but I mean,
At least just to
like
watch.
you got to
But
think about this. Why we wrestled St. Ed's and I think we lost like 43-24, which is it's pretty competitive. Wyoming Seminary beat us like 51-16. We beat Dundee. Detroit Catholic and us, they beat us, but it was a closer duel. But like we go out Wyoming 7 Bishop McCourt, they're beating us by wide margins, but we don't care. It's about us
yeah, no, you're
competing.
right. You're right.
And
You're right. You're right. But hey, like I said, I think it goes back to this mentality. I mean, what was the best team this year? Massapequa, right? That's
right,
a solid team, right? A lot of solid wrestlers, right? But it's just a different level. They're solid for New York, but it's not. When you get into these nationally ranked teams, it's a different animal. You know what I mean? And that's what. And you know what? You're right. That's what we need. We got to be, in order to get there, you got to be exposed to it. It's like lifting weights, right? You want to lift 225 bench press. If you never touch the weight, you're never going to put it up. Then you got to touch
right.
the weight. So it's the same thing. If you want to compete with teams like, St. Francis and, Bishop McCour and all these schools, St. Ed's, you got to wrestle against them, you
You're
know?
absolutely right, and and that's I'll be reaching out, sending some messages, trying to set up a big time quad meet later in the year down,
I would
um
love that. I'm there, baby. That's I would
down
be
down
watching.
down in the downstate area, and I talked to a couple coaches out at NCAA's. I got to talk to you know got to talk to Ron, about our schedule too for next year, and we're always willing to, change things up and do some bigger things, and and that's the one thing we're not scared to lose. Like we're not
No,
scared to go out and get beat 56-6. That doesn't matter to us. It
no.
matters about showing our kids what the next level is, showing our kids where we are and what we got to do to get where these guys are.
100%. And yep, I agree. And that's the thing. And in New York, it's hard to get. In New York, it's basically impossible to get a nationally ranking in season. You can only
Right.
do it in the off season. And that's another big thing I've talked about that needs to change. Other guys, PA, Jersey, you can get a guy that can make a name for himself in season by beating nationally ranked guys, and he'll get those college looks. But in New York, for the most part, that's not happening. But I see we have less than a minute here
Yeah.
left on this. So I want to thank you for coming, Steve, being a part of the 152 show. Congratulations to St. Francis on having an incredible year. I want Catholic school to keep getting better, keep challenging New York State, and let's grow New York wrestling.
Louis, thanks for having me on the 152 show. It was an absolute pleasure and honor. You keep crushing it, man. You're doing great things for New York wrestling, showcasing us, through the media level and stuff, man. And I'm going to keep enjoying watching the footage you put out there.
Appreciate you, brother.
I
All right,
bet.
man.
Talk to you
Be
soon.
good. Bye.